My name is Keeny Peeples. I'm a JBoss technology evangelist. I work on the integration products, View Service Works and data virtualization. I did work some on AMQ and Fuse, and now we have Christina Lynn. That's the other technology evangelist that'll be taking over those products, or actually has taken over those products. So I wish we could have been there with you guys in person, but with everything going on, things didn't work out. So today we're in this presentation, we're going to talk about JBoss middleware security with PicketLink and KeyCloak. So a little bit about my background. I was a consultant for the U.S. Department of Defense and Intel community around security products. And one of the things that we did was use PicketLink in a security framework. And we did a presentation at Summit in 2012. And we got some good feedback, and we had some requests to try and do a similar presentation at RHTE this year. So hopefully you'll get some information on security as well as the PicketLink and KeyCloak. So as we're going through this, if you want to use your notepads to do some architecture diagrams, I challenge you to think about the problem space with security and how PicketLink and KeyCloak can solve that problem space, whether we're talking about authentication or authorization on one server, or with some applications, or a single server that's providing the auth in and auth z. So let's go ahead and start going through here. So the three main processes of security, I wanted to touch on those some. Let me go back over here real quick, pardon me. Yeah, okay. Just trying to make sure that it is going through good. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to start speeding up a little bit. So what are the three main processes of security? Before we get into PicketLink and KeyCloak, I wanted to discuss security just a little bit. Of course, we have our authentication. You'll hear the terms auth in and auth z for authentication, authorization, and you'll also hear these three concepts or processes of security referred to as AAA, the authentication, authorization, and auditing. So what is authentication? The verification that the user's identity is valid. And that's based on three factor types: what the user knows, what the user has, and what the user is. So then we're talking password, PIN, token of smart card, fingerprint, or retina. And then with authorization, it's the granting of access rights to a user, program, or process. And then auditing, providing an audit trail of user actions. So let's move on to OASIS. I like to bring up OASIS, which promotes industry consensus and produces standards for security, Internet of Things, cloud computing, and so forth. But in our case, they have several technical committees around security. Of course, you can go out to oasis-open.org and get involved with standards. Red Hat is one of the sponsors. So then what is OASIS? As far as the technical committees go, there are three main technical committees that I like to highlight. The first is the SAML, Security Assertion Markup Language Technical Committee. the XAML, or Extensible Access Control markup language, and then the Web Services Secure Exchange, WSXX Technical Committee. So SAML is for defining and maintaining a standard XML-based framework for creating and exchanging security information between online partners. And then XAML is representing and evaluating access control policies. WSX is, it defines a WS security extension and policies to enable the trusted exchange of multiple SOAP messages. And we talk about the WS Trust specification, which defines extensions that build on WS security to provide a framework for requesting and issuing security tokens. So as we're going through and discussing PicketLink and KeyCloak, you'll notice these terms, these standards coming up. And of course, we want to use open standards even for security. So what is SAML? Well, SAML allows the business entities to make assertions regarding the identity, attributes, and entitlements of a subject. An entity is often the human user to other entities such as a partner company or another enterprise application. So, of course, security assertion markup language includes XML-based assertions, protocols, bindings, and profiles. So within their standards, there's a lot of different specifications. And what are the advantages of SAML? Platform neutrality to security is more independent of application logic, improved online experience for end users by enabling SSO, the reduced and administrative costs for service providers by providing the single act of authentication across multiple services, which can reduce the cost of maintaining the account information, and risk transference by pushing responsibility for the proper management of identities to the identity provider. So we're going to talk a lot about single sign-on and show some demos. And when we talk about single sign-on, the terms identity provider and service provider comes up. So I wanted to make sure that you understood those concepts. So the IDP, or identity provider, authenticates the user through one of the authentication types and handles the management of user identities in order to free the service provider from this responsibility. The service provider is an application that provides services to the end user, and the SPs don't authenticate the users, but instead request authentication decisions from the IDP. So in the past, of course, the applications a lot of times would have some type of authentication within them. Well, with single sign-on, of course, we want the identity provider to handle the authentication for the service provider. So a user through a web browser, which is a user agent, requests a web resource protected by an SP, and the SP requiring the identity of the requesting user issues an authentication request to IDP through the user agent. And that diagram lists the 8 steps. Okay, so going to the security token service. So WS Trust defines the concept of a security token service, the STS, and the service can issue, cancel, renew, and validate security tokens. And that specifies the format of the security token request and response. So WS Trust is the AWS star specification that provides extensions to WS security. Like I said, specifically issuing, renewing, canceling, and validating of tokens. The STS is a web service that handles these security tokens. And as you'll notice, this is a client calling a web service, communicating with the security token service so that the web service knows authentication has taken place through the token. So what is XACML? So XACML is the OASIS standard that describes a policy language, which is rather extensive, and an access control decision request response language. So you have a policy language that defines these authorization policies, and a policy enforcement point sends that request to the policy decision point to see whether the subject has access to the resource, and the response that comes back from the policy decision point is interpreted by the policy enforcement point. And I will go through that a little more in a minute. But the policy language is used to describe general access control requirements and has standard extension points for defining new functions, data types, combining logic. So if you'll notice the diagram at the bottom, we have a XACML request, which is the decision request part language, and the XACML policy, which is a policy language, and the XACML response, which is the response portion of the control decision language. So the actors involved in XACML for authorization, we have our policy administration point, our PAP, and that's the point which manages policies. We have a policy decision point, the point which evaluates and issues authorization decisions. We have our policy enforcement point. That's the point which interprets users' access requests to a resource and enforces policy decision points, enforces the decision from the policy decision point. Then we have our policy information point. This is the point which can provide external information to a PDP, such as LDAP attribution information. So if we look at the diagram below that, very simple. A policy enforcement point, which, for instance, can be on a web application or any kind of specific resource. That policy enforcement point is going to send the request to the PDP and request a response on the access, and the policy decision point compares that to the policies that are on file, and then returns the permit, deny, not applicable, or indeterminate. So what is the difference between SAML and OAuth? I wanted to highlight a couple of things here, mainly to give you an understanding of some more of the standards that are in use. Because when you work with PicketLink and KeyCloak, you have the ability to use both. So what is the difference between SAML and OAuth? So SAML is the umbrella standard that encompasses the profiles, bindings, and constructs to achieve the SSO, federation, and identity management. So one profile that's included with SAML is the XACML SAML profile, and that's currently under public review for version 2. That allows the control language to send a request with the SAML token. So then the OAuth, the open authorization, that's an open protocol that allows secure authorization in a simple and standard method from web, mobile, and desktop applications. So real quickly, the difference between SAML and OAuth, there's some additional differences here with token or message formats. So SAML does deal with XML as a data construct or token format. OAuth tokens can be different formats such as binary, JSON, or SAML, and that's explained in OAuth bearer tokens. The transport, SAML has bindings that use HTTP, but there is no restriction on the transport format, and OAuth uses HTTP exclusively. So the scope, SAML is typically used in enterprise single sign-on scenarios. Within the enterprise, enterprise to partner, enterprise to cloud, and OAuth, it was designed for use with applications on the internet, primarily for delegated authorization of internet resources. And I'll show you that in the KeyCloak example. So what is PicketLink? So this is the security framework for Java EE. The first class support for context dependency injection. It secures beans, servlets, SOAP endpoints, REST endpoints, servlets. And it's a simple API for managing users, roles, and groups. And really, it can allow you to enforce authentication any way that you want it through the API set. And the permissions API allows the fine-grained authorization. So the federation, it also allows the federation capability through SAML, WS Trust, OpenID, OAuth, and also social login with Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. I won't go through an example with those, but there are quick starts that allow you to test that. So what is KeyCloak? KeyCloak is a single sign-on server for web, mobile, and REST applications. And it is an out-of-the-box server for the auth-in, authentication, and auth-z, authorization, and centrally managing application users' roles and the role mappings. And you'll see that management console in the demo. And it also allows social login. KeyCloak can be deployed as a WAR appliance or even on Openshift, and I'm going to show you that as well. KeyCloak, the KeyCloak project is part of the PicketLink family. So one of the things that I like to bring up before going into the demo, and that is, what is the problem space that we're trying to solve here? Of course, we're trying to solve security, the security problem space, because applications need to be secure. And during the keynote, they touched on some security there. But here, of course, we're talking about middleware security. So what kind of security features do the applications need? Well, they need authentication. They need authorization. That's the auth-in and auth-z that I was talking about. There needs to be a management of users, roles, and groups, and even other attributes. There needs to be some type of auditing mechanism to show what people are accessing, what the users are accessing, whether they should have access to a resource or not. The social login with social media now, a lot of the logins you're able to use across applications So you could use that within the applications that are secured by PicketLink and even KeyCloak. And of course, single sign-on. We want to be able to have a single sign-on with a username and password instead of having to enter a new username and password for each application. Of course, we need that single sign-on to be secure. So we need to utilize tokens in order to do that in most cases. So what is the solution? How are we going to solve the problem space that we discussed? Well, there's two options. First, of course, there's PicketLink. And I would look at PicketLink as you're trying to roll your own security with building blocks. The PicketLink would be the choice, and it does have a lot of quick starts. But I would look at PicketLink, or one of the ways I would look at PicketLink is that allows you to customize and build your own security with authentication, authorization, the auditing. But if you want more of an out-of-the-box solution with a user interface, then KeyCloak would be the choice there. And when I was doing some of the consulting work in the past, that was one of the things that we worked on was using the PicketLink libraries and extending those to having a user interface that help secure applications and build users and build the roles, build attributes, and so forth. All right, so what I wanted to do next is I wanted to go through a little bit of a demo. First, I wanted to go through a KeyCloak demo with EAP, just to show you some of the examples that are included, and then go through a KeyCloak demo with Openshift, just showing how to add the application and use the cartridge. And of course, then you can go into the user interface that I was mentioning. So with the demo that we're going to do with EAP, you can actually extend those to work with the KeyCloak server on Openshift. So we'll go through that a little bit more with the KeyCloak demo on EAP. And then you can go back and try the KeyCloak demo with Openshift. All right. So get out of here and minimize this. Minimize this. And before I go on, let's see. Let me check and see if they're let's see if there are any questions. Before I go into the KeyCloak demo, does anybody have any questions at this point? In the chat window, you can enter questions there. So that is a good question. So someone asked, when will KeyCloak be productionized? So right now the beta is out on the site, and this is kind of hitting the slide at the end of the presentation, which is okay. But right now it's in beta, but the 1.0 final should be this summer. And as far as in community, as far as it getting into EAP or even as supported cartridge on Openshift, that's probably going to take a little bit longer. So I don't want to give any dates there, So we'll, if I find out that information, then maybe I can do a blog. One of the things that I wanted to cover with you guys is I do have a blog, ossmentor.com, and I try and post a lot out there. And when there is more information on Keycloak being productionized on EAP or on Openshift, then I'll post something. But right now, I don't have specific information on that. So let me go back up above. So this is pretty good. Track A has 28, track B 33, and track C 32, and track D 7. So we have a good number of people. So let's see. When will there be a plugin for Portal? CAS and JOSSO is a hard sell. So PicketLink should already work with the portal. Been a little while since I've worked with it, but what I can do, if you hit me up in email, then I can find out more information about the plugin for the portal. PicketLink, there was some work there that was done with Gate-In, and I believe it worked with the product as well. But I can follow up on that if you want to send me an email. Both Keycloak and PicketLink cover access management, single sign-on. What about user identity management lifecycle, usually referred as identity management? So we're going to cover identity management some where it applies to PicketLink, because it does give you that API set. And Keycloak is trying to solve that problem through the user interface. So like I mentioned up above, the PicketLink is more for customizing, having your own authentication authorization by using the API set. Keycloak is out of the box and using the user interface and adding the necessary files to your application or the server in order to enforce the single sign-on, as well as an authorization. So what are 7 people and track D doing? I don't know. Will it be part of EAP or will it be a new subscription offering? So some of the slides I got from Anil, who is the JBoss middleware lead, and he did give me a little bit of information with what's happening with PicketLink and what's happening with Keycloak, or I shouldn't say what is happening, what's on the roadmap or trying to be on the roadmap with EAP, but that hasn't been finalized, so I didn't really want to include it within the presentation because it would be more confidential, and I'd rather the product management team put that out. So PicketLink libraries are already part of EAP, and I'll get down to that in a little bit. Let's see. PicketLink 2.1 is in EAP 6.2, and then I believe 2.5, PicketLink 2.5 will be in EAP 6.3. But like I said, that's kind of a possibility there and not definite until product management says so. And then Keycloak and EAP, they're looking at that and deciding what to do there. So I don't have an answer for that. I think there may be some relationship with some of the mobile offering and using Keycloak for SSO. So PicketLink has already included the APIs, the libraries. I'm going to show you single sign-on with PicketLink. but that application is not a supported application, just the PicketLink libraries. Also, do we have a supported IDP and STS components, or should customers build their own? So I've been asked that question a lot when I was doing more with security. What I'm going to show you with PicketLink, the IDP, and there's even an STS that comes as part of the quick start. The libraries of PicketLink are in EAP and supported, but the applications that are used in those libraries are not supported. And so you do build your own. The customers should build their own. And that's one of the things that we did on the projects that I worked on in the past. We used the PicketLink libraries to build our own security. With that said, KeyCloak is supposed to be moving toward being the out-of-the-box security solution, starting with single sign-on. Is PicketLink a competitor of Spring Security? How to answer that? When I worked with it, yes, there were parts of it that were competing. Since I haven't worked on it, probably it's been a year now, as far as actually looking at the competition with PicketLink. I can't say exactly what parts are competing. I'm pretty sure Neil, the middleware security lead, I believe he has some of that competitive analysis, and that will be a question for him. If you want to hit me up and email, I can find the answer for you. So before we move on, any other questions? Very good questions, and thanks for asking those. And if I'm going too fast or skipping over some things that you want to talk about, then just send a question in and I'll slow down and try and answer. So let's go ahead and move over into KeyCloak. So give me just a second here. Okay, so let's see, I have so much on my desk here, and I am in Augusta, Georgia, on the East Coast in the U.S., so it's about 1:36 a.m., so hopefully I'm not sounding too tired. Let's see, let's go under. So what I want to show you first, let's go through KeyCloak real quick. Oops. So what I did, I went through the steps of downloading, installing EAP 6.2. And I took the KeyCloak War distribution, which is Beta 2, out on the KeyCloak site. And I used the pre-configured demo directory to build the samples. So real quickly, I put this in the presentation. Let me open this up real quick. So real quickly, I installed the KeyCloak server on EAP. I booted the KeyCloak server. I imported the demo test realm. I built and deployed the examples that are included. And then we're going to log in and observe the customer and product apps for single sign-on. And then we're going to try the OAuth 2 example. So let's see, let me show you this real quick. Back up under this distribution for KeyCloak. under the examples, and then the pre-configured, the overall steps that I just described to you in the README file. This did a really good job of walking through, scroll back up a little bit. The team did a good job of going through the individual steps. You'll notice here, step 1, setting up the Keycloak server for here, EAP6.x, of course, for Wildfly and AS as well. But then it goes through updating the subsystem, of course, booting the system for EAP, importing the test realm. I'm going to show you where I did that, and then building and deploying the pre-configured demo. This is what I installed, and we're going to run through real quick. Okay. So I did the Maven clean install, the deploy, and so I want to show you the single sign-on capability, which is a step 5. And then the traditional OAuth 2 example. I want to show you that real quick. And of course, that's an authorization piece for a web resource. And then you can try the examples, step 7 and 8 on your own. And I'll show you the web console, the admin console. And all this is local. And then I'll show you real quick what it looks like in Openshift. And it's really the same thing. So let's go ahead and go back up. Keycloak, example, your JBoss. And hopefully everything will come up okay. It never does in these situations. Whoops. Oh, I'm sorry. You guys said that you can't see it. All right. So let's see. Sorry about that. Let's see. See if I can increase the font. How about now? All right. Go one more. There you go. All right. So we've started the EAP, and the Keycloak server is installed. So let's go to Oops. Sorry, guys, give me a second here. I'll have to hurry so we can get through everything. So go to the admin screen first. So when you first set this up, it asks you to change the password. And I've already set it up. So what I want to show you here real quick, when it says to import the realm, what happened is I imported this demo realm. There's a JSON file, and when you do add realm, you can choose that JSON file, and it'll go through and it'll add users. It'll add the applications so that you can go through and test some of those applications. Now, there are videos that show you how to go more into detail and secure your own WAR, as well as the documentation. But these show you how to use those, how to test this real quick. So what I want to show you is if we go over to customer view page, and let's choose Bill. So if you'll notice, I've signed on, and it's the customer view. So if I go over to products and I look at the product listing, I've already signed on. It shouldn't ask me again. I can go back to customers. So those are two different applications, and they're used in the single sign-on. So you can imagine if those are on different application servers. And when we get into the Openshift cartridge, you can imagine if you have your applications in your enterprise pointed to your private paths, and KeyCloak is providing the single sign-on for the applications. So if I go and do the global logout, and let's say I go, what am I on now? Customer. I go back to product, then it should ask me to sign on again. If I go back over to customer, it should do the same thing. So whenever you're signed on, the redirects still happen, but with the tokens, it knows that you've already signed on. So let's see here. One of the other things that I wanted to show you real quick was the OAuth client. So if I go to this OAuth client, then it's going to try and access a resource, and that resource is going to prompt back whether it should allow that authorization to take place. So if I try and pull data, then first, since I've already logged out, we'll log back in, and you'll notice that it says third-party request access to user privileges, and I can accept that. So then it should give me that access. So there you can see the difference between single sign-on and some authorization with OAuth. Okay, so let's move over to KeyCloak. All right, so the demo I want to show here, and we'll go through this rather quickly, because I want to show you one thing with PicketLink, then close out with a couple of slides because we're getting close to the time here. So with the KeyCloak demo with Openshift, I don't know how many of you have done anything with Openshift at this point, but you sign up for the Openshift account, you log into Openshift, you click on the Add Application, and there's a cartridge URL that's actually in the beta docs on the KeyCloak site. You just enter in that URL, click Next, enter the application name, and choose the medium gear, and then you make note of those credentials for Wildfly if you're going to sign into the application server management console. But then you click continue to the application and change the admin account. So that's the management console that you saw a minute ago that I showed you, where I pulled in the realm with the users and applications. And of course, I put in the Openshift doc there that has the cartridge that you can use. Let's go over here real quick. When I'm switching around, I don't get to see the questions, so making sure there's none. So let's go to openshift.com. I'm going to log into my account. And this is the Keycloak application that I created. And let's see here. Grab this real quick so I can show you. I've already created that, so I'm not going to go through and do it again so we can continue. But if you'll notice, here's what you enter in for the cartridge. You don't choose one of the cartridges that are available in the repo. You enter this one so it'll download and use that cartridge definition. So let's come back over here. And when I click here, says Keycloak is running. I go to the administrative console. I can use our admin. And so what you can do here is use those quick starts, and you can actually add the realm like I did locally and choose the JSON file. And if you'll notice, there's the test realm. Let's see. So this is going to the Keycloak distribution. You can use that test realm JSON to create applications and users. And then, of course, you would have to do a couple of changes within those applications that are running on your local instance to point, instead of the local Keycloak server, to the Openshift Keycloak server. So very easy to go in there and try. So let's stop this real quick. Are there any questions at this point? Let me come back over here. Okay, if there are any questions, just let me know. I won't go through here real quick. And I'm glad we had some questions as we were moving along. All right, so okay. So how do I use PicketLink? Of course, PicketLink is in Wildfly and JBoss EAP. Of course, the versions and feature set may vary. Like I said, 2.1 PicketLink is in EAP 6.2, PicketLink 2.5, I believe, is what's going in EAP 6.3.